We're going to jump right in because we've got a bunch of questions.
Sure.
And this person was very diligent, wrote on both the Facebook and the live feature. It gets it done, right? So the question is, for Dr. Doreen, is self-talk a form of stimming? Shall we stop a child from doing so, and how?
Do they go into anything else about how they're defining self-talk? Just
no.
Okay, so maybe if that you're watching, maybe you can write back in and describe exactly what you're seeing. But what I'm assuming is that you're talking about the child just talking out loud, but not necessarily to anyone else. We would possibly refer to that as out of context speech, and it is considered one of the self-stimulatory behaviors, but I find that our kids will sometimes hear things on TV, for instance, or on the radio, or in a conversation, and then they'll try to use that type of speech or that specific phrase in other scenarios, so they actually use it to communicate in some ways, even though it might not fit perfectly. If you have a child, if I'm not understanding, and if what you're talking about is more the child like talks themselves through things, then I don't know that I would consider that to be a self-stimulatory or ritualistic type of behavior. It's almost as if the child is just verbalizing what they're thinking. Sometimes we do see that with our kids, where they will vocalize what they're actually thinking, and they don't know quite the difference of, keeping it inside their head versus verbalizing it, and that's not a very difficult thing to teach. So in that case, I wouldn't be concerned about it. The thing with the self-stimulatory behaviors is more that if it's something that prevents the child from paying attention to anything else, or if it isolates the child when they're doing that, then you want to try to replace it. Otherwise, as I've said before, we all do various self-stimulatory type things just during the course of the day. And so it's not something to really worry about. But again, because I'm not sure exactly what the topography is that you're describing, self-talk, that's sort of the best I can answer that question.
And I was listening, but I was messaging her because she did such a great job of putting it on the Facebook as well. Right. I was messaging her saying, Dr. Doreen is answering your question right now, so that she could tune in if she wants to give us some more information.
Absolutely.
That we can further answer that question.
Great.
So great to know. Okay, I have a somewhat lengthier question here. Dr. Doreen, I met you quickly in Victoria, BC with my guide dog. And I know you meet a lot of people, but that's a remarkable thing to meet somebody with a guide dog. I wanted to ask you about my 7-year-old son who is nonverbal, flight risk, sleep disorder, very smart, and very lovable son. He had 200 picture-prompted words until he was 5. Then we medicated him for a horrible sleep disorder after diet melatonin supplements did not work. He slowly lost all of his words. Currently, he is on 3 mls of risperidone at bedtime only. We have investigated seizures, biomedical reasons with no answers. He has just started saying tickle at school in the last 2 weeks with one of his EAs, once or twice. Any help or ideas you can offer would be greatly appreciated. We miss his little voice. And then she writes, thank you. And she did send some contact information.
That's great. So let's review that a little bit. He's 7 years old.
7 now, nonverbal.
Nonverbal, and he used to have a lot of visual icons, I think, is what they were saying.
200 picture-prompted words.
Okay, and now he has 1 word. So what I would do, and also, of course, sleep is a really, really critical factor for all of our kids. But it sounds like your child has a lot of different medical issues going on. I don't know where sleep is now, but you definitely want to make sure that sleep is effective or is happening. Risperidone or risperidol, same thing. It's an antipsychotic medication. I don't know that anybody would recommend it for sleep. It tends to reduce everything. So antipsychotic medications basically sort of reduce your overall ability to respond, so they kind of numb you down a little bit. I assume there's a reason that he's on that other than sleep perhaps, and but it isn't, usually physicians will prescribe that for if a child is extremely, let's say, aggressive or hyperactive, out of control, that sort of thing. I'm not sure if your child is benefiting from it, needs it. You would know that better, and you should consult with your physician on that. With regards to sleep, I've always said, melatonin also doesn't work for a lot of my kids, but then when they switch to tranquil sleep, which has melatonin and tryptophan and theanine in it, then it works. So you might want to try Tranquil Sleep for sleep. It's a chewable, and you can get it everywhere. You can order it online. You're in Canada. I'm not sure. Yeah, you can order from Amazon. So you do need to regulate his sleep, and you need to make sure that he's physically feeling good. And, of course, if he requires those medications, then, of course, you keep him on the medications. But having said that, in terms of his communication, and he's 7 and he's now entering a phase where it becomes more and more important to be able to communicate. And if he doesn't have a way to communicate, he may develop behaviors, challenging behaviors, because he's frustrated, he can't communicate. So I would strongly recommend that you reinstate a picture format. So I don't know what you used in the past, but what we typically do is we'll start with a PECS program, which is really just a series of pictures, and PECS is a very good system. I mean, the whole world uses PECS now, and so kudos to Andy Bondi, who made it years ago. But it is just one of many, and it's essentially a system that takes you phase by phase and teaches the child how to point to an object or touch or give an icon or a picture in order to get what they want. And then what we do at CARD is we'll transfer that knowledge to a iPad. Sometimes for some of the kids it works better if we just go to an augmentative device rather than an iPad. So it really has to do with the preference of the child, and some of the things that we want are, the AUG devices provide more than the programs for the iPad. But Proloquo, there's several other things now that you can use for touching icons. But you need to do that for sure, because the fact that he lost those skills doesn't mean that he can't regain them, and the fact that he's beginning to verbalize doesn't mean that you should just go down the verbal path. So I would use the visual library or the iconic system, and then you can also start to have him imitate some of the sounds in the labels. Typically, when you start a visual program, you are starting with what we call MANs, or the things that the child would request. So obviously those would be, whatever, juice, drink, food, activities they want, people they want to be around, and those are all on separate pages. And the child has to be able to identify each one. So it's a process. I mean, you have to teach each icon and then put them on a page so that the child starts to develop some system of telling you what he wants. But you can also, as the child is like touching the icon or touching the iPad, you can also say the word of the label of the object, and then prompt the child to imitate. So therefore, you're not necessarily just giving him a visual system, you're also giving him the ability to start vocalizing if he prefers to do that. Some of our kids do actually vocalize a lot faster. They learn to vocalize a lot faster if they have a visual library. And then on the other hand, some of our kids never really develop language, and instead they prefer to use the visual library or the PECS system. So that will make a huge difference in his life, obviously, because he'll be able to imitate. Now, I'm trying to think. I don't know on IBT if we have something about visual programs. I can't imagine we don't.
I'm
right?
pretty sure that there is.
Yeah, so I would recommend that this family perhaps look at IBT's website, which is the IBT stands for Institute for Behavioral Training, and I believe their website is ibehavioraltraining.com.
Yes.
And if you look there, you can search under the parent section or even under the professional section, and you'll find separate modules, and I'm sure you'll find something that talks about how to use a visual system, a picture exchange communication system. It might even also have something about how to transfer to an iPad, and that'll guide you through the whole process.
Absolutely. Great advice. And we're going to go to a break, but as we go to a break, I want to let everybody know that what she was just talking about, behavioral training, starting next week, we're going to be giving some of those trainings away and are pushed through the holidays.
That's
so you're going to want to tune in to see that. And each week we're going to be giving away one subscription to Skills for 6 months. So one per week. So you're going to want to, along with a lot of other gifts and surprises that we're going to be giving away. So that all starts next Wednesday during Ask Dr. Doreen. You're not going to want to miss it. Like a 5 weeks free of gift giving, things that you can win. But you have to watch, because at some point during each hour, a word will flash on the screen, and then you'll have to write in and say what the word is, and then we'll pick from that hour at random somebody to win that gift.
That's wonderful.
Really going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, Skills, in some cases, honestly, the feedback I get from parents having used Skills is like it can be life-changing for our kids.
Absolutely is. I can attest to that. My IEP's changed, life-changing as a result of it, so I'm a big fan of Skills. So we're going to be giving away those and more, so you'll want to tune in starting next week. Let's take a short break, and we'll be back more with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh for Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here live with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, an expert in the field of autism with so much experience.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thousands of children across multiple decades.
You embarrass me. You have to stop.
No, I'm sorry, I can't. There are lots of things I can stop, but really you are a visionary in the field of autism, and it's such a joy and a treat to be able to sit here and hear your questions for Dr. Granpeesheh, because don't kid yourself, I learn a lot every Wednesday. It's very thrilling. So next question, we don't have any more information than this, but somebody says, how do I stop my child hitting?
Right.
We don't know age.
Right. So these are the easy questions, actually, and we can go pretty general on those, because hitting, with our, and I'll sort of repeat this, and many of you who are repeat visitors to our site, you know that I always say this, but hitting or any kind of challenging behavior is just communication. It's a form of communication. So the key to stopping any kind of behavior, and this is not just our kids, any child, any person, is to figure out why they are hitting. So when you see two adults get into a bar fight or something, there's always a reason, right? They don't just randomly start hitting each other. They fight because someone said something that offended someone or whatever. So that it's anger, right? So they're trying to reduce their anger and feel better, however. With our kids, so the concept is, the easiest way to look at it is just to say whatever behavior we have is to gain something or to avoid something. And so your child's hitting either because they want to gain access to an object, we call that a tangible function. So they want to gain access to not necessarily an object, something. They could want to gain access to a toy, they could want to gain access to an activity, to a person, to a place, whatever. They're just wanting to gain access to something. Or they're trying to avoid something. So they might hit because they want to get out of the classroom. They might hit because they don't want to take a bath when they're supposed to, change their clothes when they're whatever. They're trying to avoid something. So what you have to do is figure out why they are hitting, and then you have to not allow the child to get the thing they're trying to get. In other words, you're trying to teach the child that this form of communication is ineffective. So if the child's trying to avoid a situation, then you make sure, by hitting, you make sure that if they hit, they still have to face that situation.
Immediately, right? With no pause.
With no pause. And if they're trying to gain access to a tangible or something, then you have to make sure they don't get access by hitting, okay? So by doing that, you've pretty much made hitting ineffective. It no longer functions for the child. It no longer gets them what they want. Now you have to also teach the child a more appropriate way to get what they want and an easier way.
Yeah.
So let's say hitting takes a certain amount of effort. Perhaps if it's a verbal child, just using a label is not going to take that level of effort. Maybe touching a picture of something is not going to take that much effort. Maybe asking for a break is not going to take that much of effort. So you need to teach the child. So these two things kind of have to happen at the same time, where you're not letting the challenging behavior remain effective in getting what the child wanted, but you're teaching the child something appropriate so they will do that appropriate thing and then get what they want. And there's a million different examples of how you do this. The techniques involved are just, you really should have a behaviorist, or you can go on IBT and learn some of the techniques of teaching basic language, teaching basic communication skills, and modifying. I mean, I think there's actually a section on IBT called reducing challenging behavior, and this would fall under that. But that's the basic, very easy principle. Is the only reason we do these things is because it has an effect. It's effective. So make the hitting ineffective, like make it have no function for the child, and it will stop.
It's amazing how that works, because we've been through a couple of cycles with hitting where I thought I wasn't going to make it.
Right. But hitting is hard. It's hard.
It's hard, but it works.
Usually it's just the child's frustrated and they really want something and they can't vocalize what it is they want, and so they hit. And typically we will, whether they're with another child, if you hit another child and grab an item, you're going to get your thing, so it's going to be effective. Yeah. Or if you're with a parents usually try to figure out what it is the child wants, so then again it becomes effective. And it's a hard situation, and just beware that when you first start let's say not allowing the hitting to get something, or not allowing the hitting to be effective anymore, you probably get a burst of behavior. So let's say you ignore the hitting or you block the hitting. Usually I tell people not to ignore or put on extinction, because hitting can be dangerous. But if it's a smaller child and their hitting is not it's pretty innocuous, then you can sort of ignore it. But when you do block or ignore, you typically will get an extinction burst, sort of an increase in the behavior before it goes down. And that's just because from the child's perspective, they're thinking, wait a minute, I used to hit and get my thing, and how come they're not giving me my thing anymore? So I'm going to hit a little harder. I'm going to maybe scream as well as hit, whatever. Just during that phase of the burst, just make sure you just keep doing what you were doing. It's effective. Just keep doing what you were doing, ignore or block the hitting, and every time the child does hit, you replace it with, let's say, the icon or the more adaptive and more functional, appropriate behavior that you want the child to do, and then eventually the bad behavior will extinguish and the more appropriate behavior will grow.
Okay. We've had a couple of different questions that have come in from different people about, do you have any offices in Asia? Specifically, they're looking for what's the closest office to access from India, one person, and somebody else wanting something in Calcutta.
Yeah. So in India, we actually we don't have offices there yet. Our closest one, in Asia, we're only right now in... we actually have affiliate sites, so we don't have card sites, but we have affiliated sites, and we have one in Bangkok. That's not necessarily close enough to you. So, but we do have families in India. I know that we have other children in India, and we would love to do an affiliate site in India, because there are so many families in need. So I'll talk very briefly about how affiliate sites work. Have you ever had John on this show, by the way, Shannon?
No, we have not.
So we should also maybe have John Galley on this show one time, who's the director of expansion and remote services. And I don't know if you've had Kat Minch.
We have had Kat on the show.
Right, and Kat, of course, is now the clinical director of expansion and remote services, and the two together are a dynamic duo. What we do with our affiliate sites is that if there's a group of parents and perhaps there's a school or like for instance, the one we just did in Bangkok is a gentleman who has he has his own business, it's a completely different business, but he wanted to have a center, obviously, for his own child and for many other children there. And so what we do is we come in and we help you set up the whole center. We will help you hire and train. We will train staff across the board, whether it's therapists. We will actually send our own supervisory staff to stay there for long periods of time. Like right now, I think we have maybe 3-4 people in Thailand. And they will hire and train new therapists, and they will do all the programming. So we will send supervisors from the US or from one of our other sites to you, and they will do all the programming. So they will set up the lessons for the children, and they will train the parents. They will show you how to do all the therapy, show all the therapists how to do the one-to-one therapy. And, so as that grows, then we take staff from the actual site who are good therapists, and we promote them, and we bring them out to the US even and train them as supervisors. So essentially, we act as your advisor and trainer, and we then will stay with you for 3, 4, 5 years. I think we're going on our, I'm not sure now, 4th or 5th year with our South Africa affiliate, and we will take you through everything, whatever it may be, whether it's management advice or training or difficulties with children or schools or whatever it is. I mean, as we've said before, our South Africa affiliate started with one site. When I first went out there, we let go of much of the staff. Mm-hmm. And I think they went from, I think maybe they lost some clients because the clients were afraid of all the changes I was making. Mm-hmm. And we started with, I think, maybe 7 kids, 8 kids, I'm not sure. And now, of course, they have, I think, 3 or 4 centers and growing, and everyone in all of Africa goes to them, and they're fabulous. Yeah. Star Academy, just fabulous people. And really very well-trained staff, amazingly well-trained staff. So it's very possible to do something like that in India. We would love to do something in India. That whole region, the Middle East, basically, and that area really does need some help.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of times, I can't speak with authority to this because I didn't have to do this, but I've met some of the parents who have been instrumental in making that happen in their area of the world. And they're just like the rest of us, but they just had a moment one day when they realized, you know what, if I don't do it, I don't know if it's going to happen, so I guess I'm going to do it.
And exactly. And it's so amazing because not only do you help your own child, but you end up helping hundreds and hundreds of other families, and it's incredible. It's such a wonderful thing to do.
It is amazing what one person can do.
Right.
So if you don't know, I'm going to say maybe you're that person today.
Yeah, maybe you are.
It's life-changing.
And we will, honestly, I mean, the team, John Galley is a spectacular individual, and he travels all over the world, and he does this constantly, and he's such a fabulous clinician as well as such an incredible human being. He's just a delight to work with. And Kat, our clinical director of expansion and remote services, is such a incredible clinician, and I don't think I've ever had a family who hasn't loved having her as a supervisor. And so, they're a really good team, and they can work with pretty much anyone, and they're very good at what they do with the kids and in training of staff and so on. So it's very, very doable. Mm-hmm. We will help you research and find funding in your country. We really recommend, and what I want to say is very quickly that one of our administrative staff here, who was really one of those superstar administrative people here, who actually helps organize remote services for for us. Her name is Doreen. She had to leave the U.S. and went back to India. So she actually currently does all of the organization of our remote services from India.
Wow.
So, I'm pretty sure she would also be ecstatic if we were able to start something up there. And
Absolutely.
hey, she's there. She could help even more. Yeah.
It can happen. So make sure that you take advantage of those resources. And
if you are interested, if you want more information about that, please go on our website, centerforautism.com, and go on just email in and say, I'm very interested in doing something in India, or I think there might even be a tab for remote services.
There is. If you go under services, you can go to remote services. Okay, we're going to move on to a question about, it says, my daughter is 3 years old now. When she was 1.5 years old, she used to speak a few words. After that, her words regressed and she won't speak any words. This is the sign of regressive autism. My question is, will she gain her words back again?
What age was she when she lost words?
1.5.
Yeah, that's the...
Well, at 1.5 she could speak. She's 3 now. We don't know exactly when she lost.
Yeah, that's basically the typical pattern, which is usually between 1.5 and 2.5, where our children start to lose speech. Yes, a lot of children do regain speech. It takes a lot of work to reteach these labels, but the fact that she regressed and lost speech does not mean that she will not speak. I don't know the percentages off the top of my head, but I do know that I've had many regressive kids not only learn their speech, but go ahead and recover all the way. So the regressive factor, this is partially why people have a feeling or have said in the past that it might have something to do with the vaccinations, because usually that's when we're getting our MMRs at 18 months, and a lot of parents kind of feel, and actually it's gotten lower, I must say, but, for many years parents would come to me and say, oh, it was right after the 18 months, like 24 months is when my child started to regress. But don't let that scare you. There's nothing scary about it's obviously it's scary, but the fact that they lost labels, although it's probably pretty horrendous to experience that with your child, don't give it too much meaning. Your child can regain. You need to start doing intervention. Your child's at the right age. This is 3 is the perfect age to be doing EI, BI, or early intensive behavioral intervention. So please start doing that and really give your child their best possible outcome.
This was my child. And my child speaks like a magpie now.
There you go.
But he was speaking in full sentences before he was 2, and then right before his 2nd birthday lost virtually all of his language.
There you go.
And he speaks like a magpie now.
Right.
So, but you do, as you said, you got to get on it. It's not something you
panic.
Let go.
It produces panic. I know, because
absolutely.
It's one thing. Both. I don't know. There's not one is not worse than the other. You either see your child not developing, so they plateau when other kids are developing, or you see your child developing and then losing skills. They both are horrible experiences. But just get on the horse and ride it. You trust me, you can do it, and your child can absolutely improve. Test your child's, as I always say, make sure your child is healthy and doing well, and then they can learn from behavioral interventions.
Absolutely, I concur. If you don't mind, I'm going to keep on because we've got all these questions.
Please.
So next one. My child is 8 years old, and we have too many negative statements. He is diagnosed with Asperger's with ADHD comorbid. Usually he can learn any concept, but the example that they're giving here is we cut with scissors, and immediately he transfers it to I'll cut your head with scissors, I'll cut you, etc., and many such verbal behaviors. We ignore this behavior and redirect it to more positive and constructive tasks, yet I'm unable to break this cycle of his negative statement and aggression. And with new teachers, he would always shout, yell, throw things, and say, shut up. Can you please help?
Yeah. Our kids don't really mean the things they say. They only say them because they have received a horrifying reaction, and it has now become kind of an interesting game where I can definitely get a reaction out of either you or the teacher or someone when I say something like this. And I appreciate that you guys are ignoring it now and kind of redirecting or saying something else. I think that the whole process of redirecting to something else might have become attention. In other words, just engaging in any kind of interaction when your child says this sort of thing is no longer, it no longer qualifies as extinction because you're kind of engaging in something, and or it's possible that the teachers or someone else in his environment is reacting to this. So
sometimes it can just be the kid in the back of the room and you have no idea that it's happening.
Exactly. So he's continuing to receive attention for this. I mean, it's hard for me to advise you because I would want to do a FBA. I'd want to know a lot more about the child before I actually respond to this. But realistically, I think you need to ignore the behavior, really, because it's one of those things that I guarantee he's doing for attention, and you just need to kind of move on. Now, in terms of giving him positive replacement, you can do that anyway, but just don't do it only at the time when he says something negative. If he says, I'm going to cut your head off, and then at that moment someone goes up to him and says, no, we don't say that, we say blah, 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 then he's definitely getting attention. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the ideal situation would be he can say it 100 times and nobody really cares. Extinction is you really ignore the behavior. And it's a pretty harmless behavior, quite honestly. It's just a statement, so you could ignore it. Mm-hmm. I know that other people, if they don't know this history, will not ignore it and will freak out about it, and you need to really have a conversation with everyone at school, in all environments, and so on and so forth, and ignore it. At the same time, you know, I don't know what you're doing in his behavioral program. You know, first of all, let's correct the fact that if you have a diagnosis of Asperger's, you can't have a diagnosis of ADHD. I love how people just do that. I've done that in the past. Asperger's was kind of taken out of the diagnostic criteria in DSM-5, the new diagnostic criteria. So now you have ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and you could modify it by saying it's Asperger's type. And this is the very first year ever that you can also have ASD and ADHD. Up to this year, you never were allowed to have the diagnosis of Asperger's and ADHD, autism and ADHD. So since Asperger's is gone, and you know, it can't be. Right. You either were diagnosed years ago or now. So essentially, let's not worry about labels. Let's worry about the symptoms. So Asperger's tells me that he's high functioning. Your child's high functioning and possibly has. His deficit is mainly in the area of social and not necessarily speech. And then the ADHD tells me that your child's probably maybe on the hyper side. I find it rare that there's two types of ADHD, you know, but usually it's only diagnosed if the child's extremely hyper. Right. The other type is inattentive type, and nobody ever diagnoses that. It's kind of interesting. So I don't know what the symptoms of your child are, but given that he's high functioning, I would really recommend that you become a user of skills. And I want to market our products all the time, but the truth is that not too many people know how to handle kids who are Asperger's or really high functioning kids, because ABA, generally, people who do ABA, you are teaching pretty rotely, or they're not really teaching advanced concepts, what we call advanced concepts, and a person of a high functioning person would really benefit from learning things like perspective taking. Like, clearly your child needs to learn that when I say something like this, it scares people, it horrifies them, I shouldn't say that, you know, those types of things. And there's too many lessons for me to go through them right here now, but I guarantee that if this parent went on the skills cognition curriculum and the executive functioning curriculum, you would find pretty much everything in there your child is not able to do. Everything in cognition and EF, and social probably, and those are the things you need to focus on, because as your child learns to improve in the cognitive, executive functioning, and social arenas, they won't do these behaviors anymore. They won't need that negative attention seeking.
Okay.
Very long answer, I apologize.
No, but I just have tons more questions here. Hi, Dr. Doreen. This makes me feel so low, but my 10-year-old still cannot say yes, no correctly, consistently. If he thinks a bit before answering, he may get it correct. But usually he just says something, and based on what happens, he corrects himself. This makes it difficult to teach him visual perspective-taking activities such as can mom see the cat, etc. Any tips for making his yes, no concrete? Presenting him with a strongly preferred item with a non-preferred item evokes correct answer, but all others, such as is this a lion, etc., my son is just not interested in getting the answers 100% correct. Any tips would be highly appreciated. And I just want to say, this is the kind of thing that and they start out by saying, this makes me feel so low. This is the kind of thing that tears at a parent.
That's amazing to me. It's just so, because, and those are the, as much as Shannon and I try to feel what the parents are feeling, these are the types of things you never know unless it's your own child. You just don't know.
This kind of thing is just devastating.
Right.
Because you feel like you're making progress and you're doing all these things and you want to progress to the other things. But if there's something, and we talk about it sometimes on the show, that sometimes our kids are like Swiss cheese. There's holes in places, and if we can figure out how to plug the holes, they bloom and flourish.
And that's exactly right.
But sometimes the hole is gumming up the whole works.
Yeah, but it's little stuff like this, and that's why, when you do behavioral intervention, you meet with your supervisor pretty frequently, and that's their job. Their job is to problem solve these things. Mm-hmm. So this is, I'll give you a couple of different answers because I just don't know your child very well, but so one thing you could do is you could, you said that the child does get it correct with concrete mands.
When it's something he really cares about.
Right.
Not when he doesn't.
Right. So I would go to abstract mands, so things that are, not actual objects, but do you want to go swimming? Yes or no? I don't know the child, so I don't know if he's not getting it or if he just doesn't care. When you say he doesn't care, that to me means that regardless of his answer, he ends up getting the object. So, because otherwise, if you wanted something, like let's say, do you want to go swimming? Do you want to go out? Do you whatever? And if you really wanted it, then he would care.
Well, one of the things that, going back over the question, she says that sometimes that he'll just say something, and then based on what happens, he'll correct himself. So
okay, so don't allow him to gain access to the item unless it's correct on the first try.
Okay.
So that's very simple. That's one way to do it. Because you don't want him to correct himself. In other words, what you would do is, if he corrects himself, you say nope, and you walk away and you wait maybe a minute, 2 minutes, and you come back, or maybe even maybe just a minute, and you come back and you ask again. And this time, of course, he will say the correct answer, and then you can give him the object. But you separate it with 1 minute. Okay. The second thing you can do is you can use what's called a receptive prompt for an expressive response. So in other words, you could simply say, you could ask the label of the object he wants. So, you could say, what is it? And he'll say it's a pen, and then let's say you have 2 objects, and you won't ask, what is it, cup, because the one you want him to answer is this one. Okay. So you'll just say, what is it, pen? Good. Do you want pen? And then he'll figure out that the one that he gets a receptive prompt for is the one he's always supposed to say yes to. Okay. Okay, and then you'll rotate, and then he'll understand that. But the key to this is only giving the one that he says yes to first. Okay. Okay, and then he'll understand it. This is I have never had a child who doesn't overcome this. Okay. Don't worry about this. Okay. This is easy. So if you do it right, you will do it.
Lots of opportunities in keeping it consistent, I imagine, and rewarding when it's right.
Right.
Okay.
And if you need, I don't know where this parent is, but really part of me always wants to say this, and I don't, if you really need advice and help on this, try to give us a call and let's see if we can give you a supervisor who can kind of walk you through these steps.
Okay, spectacular. Hello, Dr. Doreen. Is there any advice for how to teach organization skills? For example, taking so long to do homework or sometimes not able to finish it, or forgetting things to do from schools, needing to ask a friend, which sometimes friend also forgets, so she ends up with a bad grade for that. Age 15, high-functioning autism. I need any type of help. She doesn't like to get into her business, and I'm laughing because that's so age-appropriate at 15. And she is smart, able to keep up with her grades. However, as advancing into high school, things are declining. Thank you for your comment on that.
Okay, so it's funny that you have this problem, because that was many years ago when our little guys started to hit middle school. We realized that we really need to do a lot more intervention in the planning area, and it was exactly because of this issue that, you know, in elementary school they give you homework, you go home, you do it that night, and you turn it in. In middle school they give you homework today and it's due like a week later or in 3 days or whatever it is.
Scares me.
So right, so it's very interesting. So we started teaching our kids journaling. I really actually do recommend for you to go into skills, because in the executive functioning section there's a whole ton of stuff about planning and organizing, specifically in relation to things like this. So what we do is we teach our kids to, on the day that whatever instruction is given to them at school, on that day, so first of all, she needs to have a journal, like a calendar, or what is it, you know, like a
planner.
Planner, thank you, a planner. Mm-hmm. So on the day that it's given, she will write the homework that's due, and she will also write it on the day that it's due. So she'll write it here and she'll write it there. And she will also write at the very bottom, you'll put a section where she'll write the book that's required to take home that night or another night. So it's a matter of writing it down in the right place when the instruction is given. Now, for these particular things, we even actually made a bunch of other types of sheets and forms to help the child organize themselves. And these are like basic forms that we've made where, like, you know, I have to go to the beach. What are the things I need? I need to go back to school, or these are the things I need for that activity. So it's like, it's a good section to go into on skills, because it really does help and give you a lot of ideas of, and it's visual for the child. So it's like, this is my activity. So it says activity, and then it says things needed, people to ask help for, places to go, all that sort of stuff. So it helps the child organize themselves. It really just, and by the way, this is not something that's just your child. Most kids have this problem in 6th grade, because they don't know how to organize themselves. And then what teachers say, which I think is very helpful as well, is do the homework the night you get it, not the night it's due, not when it's due, but when you get it. And that way you'll always be a few days ahead.
I used to teach junior high and high school, and I can tell you that having read through the executive functions curriculum, I wish every single junior high school and high school student in the world had to take that we would solve so many of the world's problems. Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah, I should get my son to look at it.
I learned from it.
Yeah.
I've gotten better. I need to do more, but I got better just reading through the curriculum at some of the things that I was doing. It's eye-opening. It really is.
Yeah, it's good. You know what happens with our kids, and I'm glad you said that. I should actually go back really for, like, you know, a lot of our kids, they rush so much. They don't even want to take I have 2 daughters and a son, right? And my 2 daughters, they actually take the time to neatly write out what they're supposed to do, so they always know, they never forget. My son, you know, you go into his backpack and there's loose pieces of paper, who knows where they came from or what they are, but that's where he writes his notes, you know. And it's, when you're rushed for time, you definitely don't do the things you're supposed to do. But if it becomes part of, you know, we're all, like at night, we're all tired, everybody wants to go to bed, but hey, who doesn't brush their teeth? Everybody does, because it's a part of your routine, right? So, you know, if it becomes part of the child's routine, then it really does help. And There's also, as you said, Shannon, there's also stuff in there about study skills, like how you can organize yourself to memorize something or learn something, and how many times you should read it, or when you should read it, and all that. So that should help.
There's even handouts on how to pack your backpack so that papers don't get crunched.
Right.
I mean, it goes from that to really extensive lessons that any adult could benefit from, of how to plan for a goal and go through all the steps and check whether you're getting it done.
Right. That's good.
It's really amazing.
Great.
So encourage you to look at that. Okay. I'm rushing you through things and not allowing you to take a break. Good afternoon. My son has ADHD and is very impulsive. Sometimes he unbuckles his seatbelt while I'm driving and hits his brother and throws items around the car.
Oh boy.
He has hit me in the head before. I pull over and remove the other child from the car and resume driving when he is calm again. What else should I be doing? It's very scary for me. Thank you.
This is very scary indeed. This is one of those situations where, I assume it's not possible for you, but really you should have another person in there controlling his behavior. Or the only alternative you have is there are certain safety seat belts that cannot be unlocked easily. So you need to prevent him from unlocking his seat belt, and you need to make sure there are no items in the area where he can pick them up and throw them. That is very dangerous behavior. In addition to that, I think this is a child with just ADHD, right?
Yes, that's what
you should have a response cost system. So in other words, every time, this would be a system that would be positive and negative. So, first of all, practice this with short durations of driving. So like, for instance, you would have a token system in place for the child where if you don't throw anything, you're going to get this token. And if you get 3 tokens, we're going to go out and get you ice cream. That's just the basic format. And but you start with just, drive around the block, really. And you want to practice this. This goes back to one of those things which is like, it's, do it as a lesson. Don't just try to teach your child during life, because during life you have the other sibling in the car and it's dangerous and all that. You just do this 5 minutes a day with your child, or multiple times, but short trips. So you put the child in the seat, they put on their seatbelt, and they don't throw anything. If they throw something, you go back to the house. They don't get a reward. If they don't throw anything for 5 minutes, you will go and get an ice cream. Maybe you can go back home and give them an ice cream, or whatever it is. That's a reward. And then you make the 5 minutes 10 minutes and 15 minutes. And in the beginning, you would not have items in reach. At the end, you want to have items in reach, because you want to sort of tempt the child and still be assured that he's not going to throw things. And then you would eventually get to a place of safety where you can have the sibling in the car. But what I'm saying is, you kind of go back to just treating this as an individual lesson and start with very, very small requirement, high level of reward, and then increase your requirement and reduce the reward. I hope that makes sense. That was a quick answer because we're out of time.
I
but
know.
Essentially all I'm saying is just, don't try to teach him during the middle of crazy life.
Right.
Take the time to actually do it as a lesson if you can.
Really remarkable advice. Emily, I assume we're out of time. Okay, we have time for one more question. Okay, because we had 2 questions about yeast that I was really hopeful to get to. So I'm going to take one and then add some elements from the other. If I can find them now. What did I just do? I scrolled and I've lost them. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Finding them. Okay. Hi, I'm currently treating my son's yeast with natural remedies like grapefruit seed extract, olive leaf extract, UVA ursi, biotin, and probiotics. For the past 4 days, he's being really, really hyper. I know it's probably die-off reaction, but we've been doing this for about 2 weeks and a half now. So why are we seeing the die-off reaction now? I thought it was supposed to happen like 2 to 3 days after starting the detox. I don't know if I should keep on this track or just get prescribed medication like nystatin. If I decide to stay on this regimen, how long should I do it for? His stool test showed moderate candida. What do you think, Dr. Doreen? I heard that after the candida dies off, or is under control. The results are beautiful. Thanks for all your help, you guys. And then somebody else also said that they're having trouble. They know that they mentioned that, Shannon, you mentioned before your son had yeast. You could smell it. My son has that urine yeast smell on his body. It reeks. And trust me, I'm a clean freak, so I keep him clean. He's been on the GFCF SF diet and corn-free and no sugar, no fruits, Diet Plus, all the supplements. Also, this child, different child, was on diflucan. Seriously, what else do you do? Doctor advice about a yeast, and thank you, and God bless you.
Great. The yeast is a difficult thing to deal with. It's probably the most difficult thing. For the parent who's doing sort of the non-medication route right now, I would say you keep doing what you're doing. Because you're using natural foods to release the yeast and get rid of the yeast, it takes longer. If you were hitting him strong with something like nystatin or Nizoral or diflucan or whatever, it would actually, the die-off would probably happen faster. It would probably be occurring maybe third day, fourth day in. But when you use sort of a natural type of method, it will take a while longer. But I recommend it. So I think what you're doing is fabulous, because when we tend to use the grapeseed extract and all the different things that we're doing, that you're doing a fabulous mix of all the things you're supposed to do for yeast. It tends to be more of a long-term solution. When we use medications, and this now goes to the second family, a lot of times there's this kind of die-off and then increase of yeast again, and up and down, up and down. So I personally feel that the most effective is to use the dietary restrictions and to keep the child on the dietary restrictions for as long as you can, because you see, it's not just our kids. It's not like yes, it will take many years for you to replace the gut bacteria through probiotics. And due to our food source here and the fact that we're not exposed to enough germs, we simply do not have anywhere close to the bacteria that we should in our guts here. And I'm talking all of us, not just our kids, all of us. And that is leading to a lot of other types of inflammation, chronic problems, skin problems, all that sort of stuff. And so maintaining a diet that will actually help keep yeast to a minimum is a very good idea anyway, for as long as you can. And it doesn't have to be as stringent as you are now, but I would stay at this level of strictness on the diet for at least a few months, and then I would see how the child is doing. And for the other family, I really do think that you might want to, in addition, and a lot of the physicians will do lower doses of things like diflucan or Nizoral on a longer term. So instead of doing like a 10-day trial or something, they'll just put your child on a lower dose, and you'll be giving your child ongoing every third day and so on for a few months. But what I recommend for you is to do the types of dietary changes, because that will really help. Now, having said all of that, you should probably also go on Julie Matthews' website. She does have a lot of information about yeast and how to control yeast. There are various other dietary changes that can help as well that we didn't talk about here today, and stay with it. It does take a while.
Absolutely. We still continue to work on it. The two things that I will say that I noticed early on is that very few people talk about, when you're trying to de-yeast your child, removing yeast from their diet. A lot of parents are still feeding, like, the GFCF pizza crust that has yeast in it.
Right.
And that can be really important. And the thing that was said to me recently that I went, oh, why am I not doing this, is look into the Saccharomyces boulardii.
Yes.
That's a form of probiotic that you have to get separately.
Yes.
And that I know somebody had said that to me a long time ago, but just recently it came back up on my radar, and I went, yes.
Yeah, it's true. But it's
I think
still
it's Dr.
hard.
Berger that brought that up
Really?
on the show.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, good. That's very good.
Yeah.
So I didn't know you got David on here.
He was on. He's going to appear semi-regularly.
Oh,
so,
it's terrific.
Really
I love
wonderful.
that. That's
I
wonderful.
adored him.
Yeah, he's
I thought
great.
he was amazing.
Yeah,
so.
good. I'm so glad you did that.
Yeah, thank you for recommending it.
And if we could maybe, what is Julie's website?
Nourishing Hope.
Nourishing Hope. I really recommend that. She's a fabulous nutritionist. You might even want to consult with her.
Absolutely.
Because she will advise you much better.